Happy Friday, everyone. It's good to see you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Intentional Conversations podcast. This is our 5th year anniversary, and we are celebrating all year long. And so you will hear us certainly make reference to some of the ways in which we are leaning into this important milestone at NWC. I am Dr. Nika White. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC. And I want to shout out the NWC team for working tirelessly week after week after week to bring this virtual production learning experience to each of you, our community, who we honor. Thank you for being here with us today. We have an exciting show that's ready for you. I want to invite you to go to the chat and let us know where you are joining the conversation from today. That's always important to us to see different geographies that are represented. I am based in Greenville, South Carolina, but today I am joining the conversation from Nashville, Tennessee. And I hope that you will also let us know where you are joining the conversation from. And if you feel so inclined while you're sharing your destination, if you also would love to connect with this community beyond this hour of time, I also invite you to please share your LinkedIn information. That lets us know that you're willing to be connected beyond this hour. And my team will share my LinkedIn. I definitely always value an opportunity to be connected with this community. We at NWC really value disability inclusion, and as such, we have enabled the closed caption feature. So I want to make sure I brought that to your attention. And I also want you to know that we're going to use the chat and the comment section today to make sure we extend our sense of community as we learn with and from each other. We do have an audience that's joining us also by LinkedIn Live. And so not to worry, if you're joining by LinkedIn Live, you can use the comment section. My team is watching that closely, and we're bringing in all of your thoughts, expressions, sentiments into the Zoom chat so that we can be connected. I look forward to you hearing from our guest co-host today, and I look forward to giving a formal introduction momentarily. But once again, for now, welcome to Intentional Conversations podcast. We hope you will enjoy today's show. Let the conversations begin, indeed, and that is precisely what we're about to do. If you're just tuning in, I just want to remind you that you have joined the Intentional Conversations podcast, where we intersect dialogue of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership in business. And as the screen says, let the conversations begin. That is precisely what we're about to do. I always like to start off by acknowledging some of the national observances. And although we're right at the end of May, it is still May. And so May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Do not let the fact that May is going to be behind us momentarily to keep you from talking about the importance of mental health. It is something that we need to continue to amplify all year long so that we can show up at our best with our most mental strength to allow us to really be able to navigate spaces and places in the way that we need to. And so I hope that you will keep it top of mind, the importance of radical self-care and mental health. I also want you to know that as we close out the month of May, May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so let's continue to build up our cultural intelligence and humility and learn about other cultures that are different from ours, particularly the AAPI community. And I hope that you will find some ways to stand in solidarity with the AAPI community throughout the year. A couple things that I love to always make sure that we amplify for our community is that we love bringing gifts, and gifts of content and learning experiences is one of those gifts that we really truly enjoy. And so we have a new thought paper that we've released. It's called The Indispensable Role of Community and Connectedness. It is now available for you to peruse and read and learn and maybe apply some of the information into your practices. I will have my team to drop it into the comment section if you're joining us LinkedIn Live, or also into the Zoom chat. I hope that you will take advantage of this resource. And there's many others out there as well that we have produced over the years for your ability to tap into. We also have a wonderful service offering that we have been so excited about and supporting clients through, and that is a storytelling cultural framework. At NWC, we really do believe in storytelling as a way to deepen our empathy, our compassion, and our connection with others. It's also an opportunity for organizations to more informally and formally embed storytelling into its culture as a way to be able to lead, to guide, to institute change, and to foster inclusion. So if you're interested in this, including our cultural framework as well as our storytelling community of practice, we would love to be able to chat with you about it. We'll share some information into the link in the comment section, and we hope that you will reach out to learn more. Now, I want to give you a heads up for what you have to look forward to in the upcoming weeks. We'll be kicking off June Intentional Conversations on the 6th with Dr. Ingrid R.G. Waldron, and I hope that you will join us for that conversation. It's going to be rich, and we hope to see you here with us Friday during this hour, but not to worry. If you can't make it live, you always have the ability to catch the replay through our YouTube channel. We'll drop the link where you also can get all of the archives into the chat and the comment section of LinkedIn. But you also can catch the podcast anywhere you like to get your podcast content. We do extract the audio of our podcast and we make it available in podcasts for those who like to get their content that way. So multiple opportunities to stay connected. Okay, now it gives me great pleasure to give a formal introduction of today's guest co-host. And for those of you who may be new to us, you know that I always like to do this by reading the official bio of the individual. It's really important to us for our community to know and understand the accolades, the credentials, the experiences in which our guest co-hosts show up to the conversation with. And so that is why we always take the opportunity to read their full bio. And today I am introducing Hady Mendez, and she is a New York-based best-selling author, a Latina speaker, and ERG coach. She currently serves as the director of programs for Lean In Latinas. She is also the founder and CEO of Boldly Speaking LLC, a company that is transforming the professional experiences of underestimated professionals by providing them with the skills to rise and thrive in the corporate world or in whatever path they choose. With a diverse career spanning over 25 years, Hady has served as head of equality for a major tech firm, held multiple customer-facing roles in high tech and financial services, served as a leader and advisor across various ERGs, dedicated 2 years to working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women internationally, and, if that's not enough, served as community school director at an elementary school in the South Bronx. Hady's essays have been featured in Business Insider and hashtag We All Grow Latina, and her thought leadership has been leveraged by organizations such as Lean In Latinas, Power to Fly, Prospanica, and many others. Hady is a Latinas in Tech Luminarius 2022 honoree, a Woman of Alpha 2023 Latinas to Watch, and a 2024 LinkedIn Top Coaching and Mentoring Voice, and the recipient of ASE's 2025 Muir Moravilla Award. And so help me to welcome our guest co-host today, Hady, by showing some love through the chat, some words of affirmation, words of gratitude. You also can find those reactions, emojis, whatever it is, to let our guest co-host know that we really appreciate her being here with us today. I'm adding her to the spotlight. And before I release you to share with our community and greet our community in whatever way that feels appropriate to you, we have a tradition here. And that tradition is we always ask our guest co-hosts to share with us something about themselves that we would not know from reading their bio or hearing the bio, which we've just done, or from looking at your LinkedIn profile. And so welcome, my friend. I'm so glad you're here. I want to turn the floor over to you. And we are just grateful that you're here with us to share. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nika, and hello to everybody in the audience. So glad you're here. Excited for what the next hour will bring. I'll start with my fun fact because it's fun. I am actually an amateur street art photographer. So that's been really life-giving to me. I've done that for a while, like maybe 15 years now.
Oh,
And what it looks like, well, I'm based in New York, so there's lots of street art here, but what it looks like when I travel to other places is that that's one of the first things I do. So whether I'm in Rome or Hawaii or San Francisco or anywhere else in the world, I'm always either going out on my own by Googling and finding out where the good street art is, or I'll take street art tours and I'll pay to have someone take me around and show me the good street art. But it's a really fun hobby and it's free. Usually it's free, like, no or low cost. And yeah, sometimes it takes me into some back alleys. I'll tell you, sometimes I'm like, where am I? But usually it's like so much fun. Yeah. So anyway, that's my fun fact.
Hi, I would have never guessed that. So thank you so much for letting us into some of the intricacies of your pastimes. So I'm curious because I don't know a lot about street art. How do you compare street art to maybe like graffiti? Is it somewhat along the same lines? Help me to understand, and maybe for the audience here too.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's some others who are just as
Oh,
equally
okay.
curious.
Yes. So graffiti is usually like words. So,
Yes, yes,
or like somebody's burner or like their tag, like their name, their street
yes.
name. So that is what graffiti usually is. And it's a work of art on its own because usually
Okay.
make it really nice and it's like big and outlined and colors and maybe there's some art elements in it. But what I usually take photos of are murals. So I like murals, I like stickers,
Oh,
I like paste ups, I like stencils. So it's a
yes.
little bit bigger of a universe. And I got into it, I have to tell you, because I do consider myself like a social justice advocate. And a lot of street art is really the people talking and the people, and it's
Mhm.
usually the voices of the people that are like marginalized that are saying like, hey, like this is something important to us, or this is something we want to celebrate, or like look at this, or I don't know, like I do feel like it is usually the voice of the people that are not in the majority that you see a lot through street art. And so um I think that made me like it. Like that was like kind of what drew me to it. And then I just really like bold colors and I like, and I just find it interesting. And every part of the world has very different street art. So it's like similar and different. And like I noticed even when I went to Italy, there were paste ups, and paste ups are like kind of things that people, it's like a cutout and then people paste it. And I noticed like
Yeah.
when I went to Italy that like there were statements there around immigration, around politics, around the
Mm.
government that I didn't understand, that were like quite subtle as an outsider, a foreigner. I didn't know what they were saying, but I was like, this is something more than just a picture. And then like I had someone took me on a tour and they were like, yeah, that's what this means. A lot of people are fighting about immigration and this, that, and the third. And it's just really, so you learn a lot about local regions and communities by their street art.
No, I totally agree with that. It definitely is a form of expression. And there used to be a time, years and years ago when I would encounter graffiti, I would always think, well, why would someone just disturb that building, right? And as I matured and got older and I started to really pay attention to the messages and not just, visually see it and think that someone is kind of vandalizing a place, I now have such an appreciation for graffiti and street art because, to your point, Hadi, it often will combine some type of very meaningful message. It's a way
Yeah.
to educate and to show our support for something or messages that we deeply feel strongly about. And now I look for them. And as I travel, I mentioned that I'm in a different state today. I'm in Tennessee, but as I travel, I often look around paying attention to the murals and the art and the
Yeah.
graffiti because usually I'm drawn to it just because of that. So
Yeah.
we had no idea we are going to show up today having a lesson in this conversation about street art
There
and
you
graffiti,
go.
but I love it. I think it's very fitting. And so thank you for giving us that moment and sharing a little bit of, again, the insight into some of what you enjoy. I love that. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. And you have worn many, many different hats. And I shared a lot of those, of course, as I was reading your bio. But just to recap, author, coach, school director, and advocate for incarcerated women. I want to understand and give this audience an opportunity to understand as well. How do all of these diverse experiences shape the way that how do you approach leadership? And particularly when it comes to guiding others through identity driven challenges in corporate spaces.
Yeah, it's an amazing question that you asked, and I had to like really think about deeply, like how does all of those, how have all those experiences really kind of shown up for me? And I would say that first and foremost, especially the work that I did in the prisons when I was a volunteer in South America, and then again when I worked at the school in the South Bronx, those were reminders to me that there are people, like human beings in front of me. Like it's
Yeah.
not just like we're pushing paper or we're just, processing a thing, a widget. We can get very accustomed to that type of thing and forget that there are actually human beings and people with needs that are involved, and that in those spaces, that's kind of what I had. I was in, when I was in jail with women, they were telling me their problems and asking me for help and support. And so I think the experiences have first and foremost reminded me that I'm dealing with human beings.
Hmm.
I also feel that the human beings have different needs. So, whether it's a school family or an incarcerated person, or a client, a corporate client, I try to understand what they need and how I can show up for them, how I can support them, how I can provide value, how I can, be a listener to them. When I volunteered in the prison, I went through a mission organization, and they reminded us, you are the gift. Like you're there to listen. Like you're not there to do very much else but listen to these people and just show up for them and accompany them. Like it was this ministry was called Ministry of Presence. We were just there for them.
Mm.
And so I try to have that ministry of presence wherever I go. It's just like, first and foremost, I just got to listen and understand and appreciate what people need and what people are struggling with and how I can support. And then I am a firm believer in empowering other people. So I think almost everybody here would probably be familiar with that old saying about give a person a fish and they'll eat for a day, but if you teach
Yeah.
them how to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. And I feel like that's always been my philosophy too. I'm not one of those people that um I just want to like do the thing for you. And there's a temptation to do that. It's obviously easier and
Yeah.
quicker to do it that way. And I remember, especially when I worked with the school families, like there was such a temptation to just fix problems for people. And it was like, no, teach people how to fix problems, teach people
Yes.
how to advocate for themselves. And then when I'm not here anymore, they can keep doing that for themselves and for their children. And so I think in the end, when I think about my style, it really has to do with making the encounters meaningful, and also leaving people with the ability to advocate for themselves, like that they at the end they're going to be able to continue to do whatever they need for themselves even when I'm not there. And yeah, and I remember I taught a life skill, I taught a workshop with the formerly incarcerated women when they got out, and it was like a speech course. And
Yeah.
and a lot of it was just like learning how to use your voice, and I daring to dream. Like I would ask them like, "Hey, what do you want your life to be like 3 years from now?" And they were like, "Girl, I just got out of prison. What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "But you gotta have a dream. Like you gotta have goals.
Yeah.
You gotta have something you're working towards that's gonna motivate you and inspire you." And lots of them were mothers. I worked exclusively with women. A lot of them were mothers and they had children. And so a lot of their dreams were for their children. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Let's have dreams for your children.
Absolutely.
Let's have dreams. Let's make sure we're working towards something. And so even when I'm not there, I hope they're still working towards those dreams. I hope that for them.
Yeah, I hope so too. There's so much to unpack with what you just shared, Hadi, in so many ways. I want to just take a moment to kind of lean into it. I mean, first of all, I love this idea of empowering people and not enabling them. And those are my words, not yours, but you certainly
Yeah.
talked about the importance of giving people what they need so they can sustain themselves. And I truly believe that that is important as well. And there's something to be said for all of those experiences that has provided you with this foundation motivation to do the work that you do today very effectively? Because some probably would say, okay, well, someone who spent time, kind of maybe, teaching in an elementary school in the Bronx, how can they relate to what's happening in corporate spaces? And so I love the way that you have just articulated the value of being close in proximity to each of those communities and understanding their needs, because I'm sure it's deepened listening ability, because you talked about the ministry of presence, just being there. And that is in and of itself incredibly powerful. I mean, I think that that's a concept that should exist across the board in all spaces and places. Sometimes we spend too much time trying to fix people and their
Yeah.
problems instead of just holding space for them to
Holding space.
just
Yeah.
share and feel heard and
Yeah.
seen, right? And valued. And I think that that is a great gift of humanity, as you have shared. And so I love your journey and the way in which you talked about how those experiences have really brought kind of full circle moments for people that you've had the ability to impact. And then lastly, what you said about dreams. When I think about your time volunteering and working with women who were incarcerated, sometimes our notion about certain communities, our judgment will allow us to maybe criticize or throw certain populations and communities away, think that there's no value. And so I'm always grateful when I encounter people like yourself who sees the humanity in others, regardless of circumstances and situations. And quite honestly, I like to say that sometimes there's only probably one, individual situation or instance that keeps us from being maybe in those same predicament as
Yes, that
others. And
part.
sometimes it's just that we didn't get caught, right? Or maybe
That's
it's
right.
something else. But so I love that. I just wanted to acknowledge the gifting that you have to be able to show up in such a high level way and meaningful way in all these different spaces and places. As I was reading your bio, I talked about the fact that you refer to populations that you serve as underestimated professionals, and I love that language. I often use that as well. So I want you to share some common challenges that underestimated professionals most often face when they're trying to advance in their careers, and how can others, whether they're peers, whether they're the mentors, that their supervisor or leader, how can others serve as a way to help minimize some of those challenges for those underestimated professionals?
Yeah. And by the way, I changed that fairly recently. I would say maybe in the last year. I had
Mhm.
underrepresented professionals for some time. And
Yes,
yeah, but I like underestimated better too, because
I do too. I
I
do too.
think
I
it's
think I first heard Jennifer Brown use it, who was a friend of our community. She's a
oh,
friend of mine and in the
I know
space.
Jennifer well. Yeah, that's so funny.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you do. You both are in New York. But yes, I think I first heard her say underestimated. And I thought, yes, that is the better way to talk
that's
about
it.
it than underrepresented. Because, yeah, that's not true in and of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. So I would say some of the things that I've noticed, and by the way, I'm an underestimated professional too. So I'm not just like it's not just out there, it's me too. So
Hey, I think so many of us can raise our hands and
yeah,
say, that's
yeah,
me as well. So, yes.
yeah, me too. So I feel like I know I lacked confidence, and I know
Mhm.
lots of people do. And that's often because we're told we're too much or not enough. And you're too loud, your lipstick's too bright,
Yeah.
your earrings, they're too big, Hottie. You're taking up too much space. You're not, you know, you don't have that executive presence we're looking for. You're not a good fit, all the things. So I think, and we've come to believe a lot of these false narratives. So I think
Yes.
the confidence is one issue. I think like having mentors, sponsors, people who kind of like look out for us. I think we have a lack of those. So, and that can really hurt us, especially as we're navigating more senior roles, as we're trying to get into more senior roles and get promoted.
Yes.
Um, I definitely think we are just as qualified as the next person. There would be nothing about the color of my skin or where my parents were born that would make me more or less qualified to do a job. However, we don't always have, maybe we haven't been exposed to the skill sets that help us to navigate the politics that come with
Yeah.
rising through the ranks. And I know, like, I think of my own life, and it's like, I never learned how to advocate for myself at home. Like my mother was like, it's a no. And now we're done. And I never
Mhm.
I didn't have the opportunity to say, well, mom, how about this? Let's think about it this way, Mom. A or B or anything like that. Like it was just like, no, it's a no. And so that was a
Yeah.
skill that I was lacking for a very long time. And, someone had to pull me aside and be like, hey, I think you could benefit from advocating for yourself and here's what
Yeah.
that looks like. So that's kind of important. And then I would say, it's kind of related to the lack of confidence because I mentioned that it comes from these narratives that we're told. But I do think we carry some of our own limiting beliefs, and those
Yes, we do.
beliefs hold us back. And it's anything from like, I shouldn't question a senior leader. I shouldn't
Hmm.
push back on something because maybe it's going to make me unlikable, especially if I'm the only one. And I can't tell you how many times I've been the only one to say, wait a second. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying this, that, and the third. Did I get that right? And it's like, I don't think, that doesn't sound very equitable. That doesn't sound like it's going
Hmm.
to be accessible to everyone or whatever the case might be. And, everybody looks at me like I have, horns coming out of my head or like five eyes. And it's like, well, but and then the best part is like when we walk out of the room, everybody's like, "Yeah, I'm glad you said something because I was thinking the same thing." It's like, yeah, but no one like said anything when I was saying it, but there, I know there were people that also agreed with me. And I would say, the last thing around like these limiting beliefs is like, and I know I believe this one for some time, is like I can't get promoted before the colleague that was hired before me. So it's like there's an
Mm,
order and I gotta wait for my turn. And it's like you might be waiting for your turn for a really long time. And I know people
right.
that got hired after me that got promoted before me many times. So anyway, those limiting beliefs are not good. What people can do to help, if you're an ally, if you're a manager, if you're a senior leader, I would say like take time to give us our flowers because
Yeah.
we don't hear enough about the great things we're doing and the great ways we're showing
Yeah.
up and the positive ways we're contributing. And it's helpful to hear that. It's, if there is someone on your team that identifies as underestimated, before you come at them with all the ways that they weren't enough or they were too much at the meeting, how about saying, I love that comment you made about like how we can work with the customer. That was such a great idea. And that's PS, by the way, those are some of the great gifts that we bring to the table is looking at things differently, having a different point of view and coming up with very different ideas than what like kind of are the standard ways. Like, this is how we always do it. And it's like, well, what if we do it this way? Have we ever done it that way before? Have we ever tried? And if we tried and it didn't work, what were the circumstances why it didn't work? Because maybe we could try again, because I still think it's a good idea and I think I can get it to work. So anyway, that's kind of how I view that.
No, I love that, Hadi. You shared so much that was really useful and practical, particularly around how can we just, show up for others that are often overlooked and underestimated. And sometimes it's just kind of amplifying some of, some great points that they brought to a
Yeah.
conversation that could have, yielded some great, results or problem solving. And so it doesn't have to always be something that feels like it's an incredible risk, right? I mean, sometimes, I think we do have to take risk for others, especially those who are part of underestimated communities. But sometimes it's just a simple act in the moment that can
Yeah.
make a big difference. Yeah.
I want
And yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
add two more things? I just thought of
Sure.
two more ways
Sure.
because I want to leave people with some practical like
Sure.
suggestions. Another thing you could do, and this has happened to me, and I'm guessing it's happened to other people here from underestimated communities, is like when you give an idea and people are like, oh, okay, that's nice. And then like the next person goes and it's like, same idea. And it's like, that's
Same idea.
great. And it's like, if you want to be a good ally, say like, I think that's what Hadi said. I'm pretty sure that's what Hadi said before. Let's see how we can continue, like make it better or like continue to talk about it or add more to it. But like make sure that underestimated people get credit for their ideas. And that could involve a little bit of risk. But if you're a senior person, you don't have a lot to lose. So
No.
you should totally be the one saying it and be like, I believe that was what Hadi said. So go ahead, let's keep talking about how you think Hadi's idea could be better. So that's one. And the other thing that I think is really important too is sometimes I find that sometimes decisions are being made without us at the table. And
Oh,
some
yes.
people feel like, oh, we don't need Hadi there. It's okay. We could decide and, to fill her in later. And if you are in that position of saying something, and let's say you're invited to that meeting and you're like, you notice that there are people missing in the room, you can be the one to say, I don't think everyone's here. Doc-
Right.
Dr. Nika's not here today. Let's
It's the
regroup when
big one.
Dr. Nika's here. And again,
Absolutely.
those are like real easy, straightforward, and it's like you are low key calling people out, and that's what you want to do. You want to just say, hey, we're missing voices here. We want all the voices here before we
Absolutely.
make decisions. Yeah.
Those are two great additional examples to make sure that we're acknowledging credit where credit is due, because sometimes it is easy for the conversation to get convoluted and someone else to take credit for really a thought that was brought up, particularly by someone who's often overlooked, right?
Yeah.
Those who are part of the underestimated communities, and I love this notion about who's missing from the table. We first have to care that people are often missing from the table. So let me just amplify that. And then once you care about that, hopefully that will yield the action of starting to be intentional to call that out so that they can be brought to the table. I often say, nothing about me without me. Nothing
That's right.
about me without me. And we need to think that same way about all communities, because that's what's going to make those conversations richer, much more inclusive. And it's something that we all should pay attention to. I also love, Hadi, that you called out that while it could be a confidence thing, when we are giving credit, that boosts the confidence. But then also you pointed out that a lot of it is very systemic. They are the narratives that we tell ourselves because we've been conditioned to believe them because of how society has always operated, right? To see those underestimated populations as unqualified or unworthy of having a seat at the table and having these opportunities. And so I think that's critically important also to just amplify. Now, you do a lot of work around employee resource groups. And so I want to talk about that for a moment because I continue to be a firm believer that ERGs, BRGs, they're referred to so many different ways, um, but that they serve a place, especially in corporate organizations, well, all types of organizations. But what I also know is that of the many things that are being challenged right now during this anti-DEI political climate, ERGs are one of them. And while there are some loopholes that people are able to continue to maintain having ERGs, which it's always been the case, and what I'm referring to is that they're open to everyone, there's still some folks who may be a little bit confused by them. And so, because we know that the political climate is creating some challenges right now for organizations to feel a sense of safety, because there's a lot of vulnerabilities right now in these opportunities that are targeted towards certain populations or communities. How have you been navigating these conversations with all the organizations that you support around, continuing to manifest ERGs as a way to help bridge the divide that can exist in a lot of organizations where the underestimated professionals feel like they don't have opportunity or community and safety?
Yeah. It's interesting. I get asked this question all the time because I am an ERG coach and advisor, and I'm like a keynote speaker at a lot of ERG events. And they are actually, despite all the noise, ERGs are thriving right now. Like I get a lot of inquiries. I'm getting a lot of invitations to come and talk. People are launching ERGs. People are relaunching ERGs. There's a lot of activity around leveling up ERGs. It's not to say that there aren't issues, because there are. One of the issues that you talked about is safety, and mostly we're talking about psychological safety, like you entering a
Right.
space and feeling like you can trust the people that are there to like have your best interests in mind. And that can get a little scary, especially when there's people outside of the community that are there and you're not really sure about everyone's intentions. So, that is happening. That is, that's a reality. And I think, there's ways around it. To me, like if someone joins a community, whether you're a part of the community or not, I always say it's a best practice to find out what they're looking to get out of the experience and what they're looking to bring to the group. So you can do that for everybody, including people that don't belong, don't identify as members of the community, as well
Mhm.
as people who do. And you could just say, hey, Dr. Nika is so great. I'm so glad you joined our ERG. Tell me a little bit about what you're hoping for. Tell me what you're hoping to get out of the experience. So like I know, and I can try to create that experience for you. And also, PS, what are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing
Yes.
thought leadership? Are you bringing, like, you want to be like a mentor to some of the people in the group? Are you looking to learn? Are you looking to like just team up with people? Are you looking to amplify voices? Like, what is it that you want to be doing so we can make sure we're giving you an opportunity to do that? And like I said, don't just pick on the people that don't identify as part of the community. Just do that for everybody who's new to the group and make that a best practice. And then you always have the information you need and you can set people up for success. So I feel like that is a wonderful best practice that you can do for people that are struggling, with like, hey, now this like ERG seems like it's open for everybody. It's a free for all. Like, where do we still find community strength? Where do we find this like safe space that we crave and that we look for and we need? So I think that's a good option. I would also say that, be intentional about creating um, I guess programming that is geared or centered around the group that
Absolutely.
the identity of the group that the is formed around. So like create and center them with the programming that you do. And then also, in addition, you could have some additional programming that's meant for learning and to involve allies and to get other people, if you want to support the Latino community, here's 3 things you could do today or tomorrow, or we're launching a new mentoring program, or we're launching this reverse mentoring thing, or we're doing like these 10 other things. Here's all the ways that you can support us and get involved. So I feel like give people like ways that they can do things, and I think that is going to be go a long way. Um, but yeah, I would say ERGs are thriving as far as I can tell. There are there are some companies that are kind of, I would say, like defunding or like divesting
Coming
from.
back a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pulling back a little bit. And so, I have had 1 or 2 ERGs be like, my budget's only $1,000 this year. So I'm like, maybe we could talk next year. Like stay. I do a LinkedIn Live series for ERG leaders. I'm like, check out my LinkedIn Live because it's a free resource for everybody. It's targeted for ERG leaders. So, there's plenty of free resources and things that people can take advantage of if they find themselves in that situation. But there's still a lot of people investing. A lot of people want to launch. One of the newest ERGs that's getting a lot of love are the multi-generational ERGs. That one's blowing up. Like
Yeah.
everyone's doing it
Ah,
because that's for everybody.
it's for everybody.
Everybody can fit into that one quite nicely. So the multi-generational ERGs are blowing up. And they're getting a lot of traction. And I've had the opportunity to talk to people in those groups, and a lot of them, it is filled, often populated with a lot of young people, and I love that. Like,
Okay.
I love learning and um, interacting with Gen Z and the millennials, and it's been a good learning experience for me. But I feel like, Gen Z is different. They have a lot of, they're very assertive. They just move through the world differently. And it seems like they got it all together and they have all the answers. But I feel like they also are looking for tips and advice, and
Of course.
they've been really open to it. So like I got feedback from like this guy came up to me after my last presentation. He was like, I'm up for promotion and like everything you said really hit home, and I'm glad I came today. And that really touched me because I was like, good, like go get your promotion.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're providing some free educational resources for those who may find themselves in organizations where the budget has been cut a bit. Because to your point, I think that now more than ever, ERGs, BRGs have become even more reliant upon by employees who are part of those different,
Yeah.
identities,
Yep.
because they are seeing where their organization is having to reimagine and evolve their DEI, programming and initiatives. And in many ways, because it's been evolving so fast, they've had to almost put a pause on it, right? In the interim, just to figure out, well, where is this going to land so that whatever the reimagination is going to be in compliance, or it's going to be aligned with where we feel like we are at least acknowledging the potential risk and vulnerabilities, right? Based upon the existing political climate. So ERGs are important. I'm glad to hear that you are experiencing this uptick in greater interest of amplifying the value of ERGs. And by the way, I think that probably many in this community are fully aware of this, but it just requires amplifying that ERGs have always had a best practice of being open to anyone. And it has always had a practice, though, of while it may have been open to others in order to be able to help create those allies and give them a way of deepening their understanding of lived experiences of the targeted group, it has also always been a best practice to make sure that any and everything that you do is really geared towards centering that targeted group. And so I just wanted to amplify some of the things that you brought up, which I think is just really important. Um, and so the multi-generational ERGs, that's interesting to me. I actually saw an uptick in that years ago when a lot of the HR professionals started highlighting, hey, guess what? We're going to have 5 generations in the workplace at one time. Are you ready for that? And so I love to see that that is continuing to grow in popularity. So as we're talking about ERGs, we also, in a previous question, brought to the conversation that for underestimated professionals, there's often those limiting beliefs. And so I want to go ahead and go to a question that has appeared into the chat. And this is from Melanie. So Melanie, thank you for being a part of our community and for your question. The question is there a way to help identify those limiting beliefs? You don't know what you don't know. You may not even be conscious of them. So Hady, do you want to provide maybe some guidance around Melanie's question, please?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Melanie. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you like the best answer, but I'll tell you a little bit about how it showed up for me. And it actually was like self-awareness. Like I had to dig deep. And some of this maybe is going to be with the help of a professional, whether it's a career coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a partner, a best friend, like a community member that, like a community member of a group that you're part of. But a lot of it is just like, what, as an example, let's take a real example. I didn't get promoted because I'm Latina. Let's say that's my going in position. I didn't get promoted because I'm Latina. And it's like, okay, let's look at that more closely. Say more kind of thing. Look more closely at that. And then if I kind of peel that onion back a little bit, I'll be like, well, I think, people have a bias against me. And I think people, I've heard a couple of people say that I talk really loud. And I've also heard, I heard someone say that, executive presence is really important. And I'm not even sure if I have executive presence. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. But like I feel like you got to keep kind of peeling back a little bit and be like, I think there's an exercise that's like, why? Say more, and you keep peeling it back and you kind of, I think that is how you arrive. And like, again, maybe you get, for me, it was through a career coach because I would say things and my career coach was like, listen to yourself, say that again and listen to yourself this time. And I would listen to myself and I'm like, and she's like, do you believe that? Like, I guess maybe I don't. And she, and she pushed back. She challenged me. So I think a little bit is going to be like, what do you, make a list of things that you really are believing, the stories you're telling yourself, and try to like understand, like, are these things real? Is it true? Is it really happening? Is this just something that I've managed to convince myself, or like you said, Dr. Nika, that we've been conditioned to believe? Because it's not just you. I don't want anyone to walk away here thinking that you're the problem. I want you to understand that this is a societal thing. And a lot of this has to do with conditioning. It has to do with the way you're brought up. It has to do with your family circumstances. There's a lot that's going to contribute to it. That's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you need a professional involved because it's a couple of things that you're tackling at the same time. But I think once you get a good understanding, you see like, oh, I don't know, maybe that isn't true. I do know I am a subject matter expert. I am as qualified as the next person. Like when you start like documenting those things, those are not limiting beliefs. They're the opposite. They're like beliefs of abundance. And it's like, belief that like anything is possible. I think that's where I noticed that it's like, oh, this whole time I was thinking I had all these like kind of barriers and obstacles that were preventing me from getting where I wanted to go. But suddenly I'm looking at it from a different lens and I'm noticing that I know as much as the next person. I am also an expert. I also have worked for 20 years in financial services. I also have a background in tech. I'm also all these great things. There's not a real good reason why I shouldn't be where my peers are. And so then therefore I'm going to step into this and I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to do the work that's involved to get all the skills I need to get there. And I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to say my dreams out loud so people can help me to achieve them. And that's one thing that I learned. Once I became aware of those limiting beliefs and adopted those mindsets that were a lot more open and much more affirming, then I was like, hey, manager, this is what I want. I want to get promoted in a year. And they were like, oh, we don't know. We can't promise. I got you. You can't promise. Work with me. Are you willing to work with me to get there? If I do the work, are you going to support me? Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Then let's do the work. Let's get our plans together. So
Yeah, I so appreciate your response to that. As I think about this question, I think there's two audiences. I think that one, which is the vantage point that you shared your commentary, Hady, which was the individual. I may not know what limiting beliefs that I have as an underestimated professional, but I also want to highlight the responsibility of those people leaders who really want to see everyone show up at their best, have full opportunity for success, to also think about how can I identify maybe where there could be some limiting beliefs in those that fall under my direct report so that I can help them. And I think some of the best ways to do that is to be very observant and to build and cultivate those relationships. And when I say be observant, do you notice that in meetings there's certain individuals that are constantly kind of shrinking back or not speaking up, right? Are you noticing that there's certain individuals who are not as intentional about creating greater visibility within the spaces where there are other maybe leaders involved that could be the ones who are, charting a pathway of upward mobility, promotion wise? Are you also thinking about are you noticing when people are maybe not having conversations with you as their supervisor around career pathing, just trying to understand what does that look like? What's the possibilities for me? And so I think that there's an onus also on the people leaders in organizations to be aware of how to spot limiting beliefs. And I just didn't want that to go
yeah.
unmissed in this conversation.
I want to add one thing that you made me think of, and it's another thing that leaders can do is to be very specific. So I remember early in my career when I would talk to my manager about getting promoted, and I was afraid to ask for a promotion. I didn't know how to like say like I'm ready and here's all the great
Yeah.
things I've done and this is why I should get promoted and like I was just sort of like am I getting promoted? And they're like, no, because you're not ready. You're not ready for the next level. That's not helpful, by the way, to anybody to tell
Yeah.
they're not ready, especially when you're getting good reviews. So my reviews were all good,
Yes.
but somehow I wasn't ready. So it's like something the
But what
magic
does ready
happens.
look like? Help show
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
that.
So if I'm not ready, I'm gonna need a little bit more information that's actionable so that I can get ready. So if you think I'm not ready, tell me something different. Say, Hadi, you're great with customers. We need you to get better, like become more knowledgeable with the products. I see that being the opportunity with you. And here's some people that I think you should reach out to get that knowledge so that you can be ready for the next cycle. Like be specific and like kind of enable me to get there. To tell me that I'm not
Yeah,
ready is just not that's not helpful, and that just
absolutely.
it feeds that narrative where it's like I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm not qualified, that whole like imposter syndrome and just that feeling that you're not worthy of it. And it's like that don't tell me that because that doesn't help.
Yes, you have to be really useful with that feedback. And I want to take it a next step. It's not just about here's some people that you could go to, but I'm going to introduce you to some folks that and help provide that entry point for that relationship to kind of be cultivated. Or, you know what, I know of this great professional development opportunity that I'm going to send you to. I mean,
Yep.
I think that those are also very great proof points of someone that genuinely cares as a leader about trying to advance their people, particularly those who are often overlooked and underestimated. So I love this discussion. So we have maybe 12 minutes left, and I want to just acknowledge that in the time that we have left, I want to give others an opportunity. Thank you, Melanie, for your question, to present your question or your curiosities, and we'll take as many as we can. If you're part of the Zoom community, then I invite you to use the raise hand feature that lets me know that you're willing to be invited to unmute yourself and share directly. If your camera's on, I'll even spotlight you. But if not, go to the chat, share your questions there. And if you're on LinkedIn Live, we have not forgotten about you. Go to the comments section. We're watching that. We're bringing the questions over. And again, we'll take as many as we can in the time we have left. While maybe you are percolating on what curiosities are bubbling up for you, I want to go to the next question. And I think this is an important question because I know that you're working on a book. And I want you to tell us a little bit about the vision for this book, and then also, give us just a little bit about what we can look forward to when this book is available, Hadi.
So thank you. I'm so excited. The book's coming out September 15th, which is the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month. That was by design. The book is written for Latinas like me and for other women of color. And it's all about how we step into our power, how we find our voices, how we are disruptive, be how we are can be disruptors in the workplace in the most positive way possible, how we can hold others accountable, how we can take up space, how we can advocate for ourselves, how we could learn, how to promote ourselves so that we can be ready for those advancement opportunities when they present themselves. And also making sure that we are prepared to ask others to help us reach our goals,
Mm,
and also being clear, having clarity around what we want from our lives, not
yes.
what others expect, not what others want. I think a lot of underestimated people, well, I'll just say for myself, I was a people pleaser for a very long time, and I wanted to make my mom proud. And I still, that's still a priority to have other people
Sure.
be proud of me. But I need to do things that I love, that set my heart on fire, that make my heart sing. And that took time. That was a discovery process. It was a journey for me. And so the book, I'm not going to share the name here, but the book is about my journey and the lessons that
I
I learned
love
along
that.
my journey. And I share them with people because I think maybe they can be helpful to other people, to other women, women of color, under other and other underestimated people broadly. I think can really glean, get some help, and I think just, yeah, glean a little bit from the lessons that I learned. But also I talk about what I did different. So it's like this thing happened to me. So it's
Yeah.
all about stories. I love that you were talking about storytelling in the beginning.
Oh,
I
yes.
like telling stories. So it was all about I start off each chapter with a story, and then I say, here's what I learned, and here's like what I have done differently ever since. And here's, and that's what you could do differently too. And so the whole goal is just really to get other people to learn from my experience. So why should you have to go through the same thing that I went through, and 40 years or 30 years later be like, okay, now I can advocate for myself. I would rather see you advocate for yourself earlier on in your career and get all the things that you're worthy of and that you deserve much earlier on, and get further, be in those senior management roles that we deserve that much sooner. So this is all about impact and making sure that our communities are getting the skills they need so that they can get to those higher levels if that's what they want, or they can start their own businesses if that's what they want, or they can just spend time with their family if that's what they want. Whatever they want to do, I want them to feel good about doing it, and empowered, and like strong, like really in their
Lovely. Yeah, no, that is beautiful. So we don't have the title yet, but stay tuned. It's coming in September, and we did share Hadi's LinkedIn information, so we know that she'll be sharing that out there. So make sure that
very
you're
soon.
following her. Yeah, very
Very soon.
soon. I want to lift something out of what you just said. Oftentimes when we think about books that are designed to help empower women of color in multiple ways, a lot of times people will see that that is a book only for that population, only for women of color. And I want to challenge that, because I think that for all of those who are sitting back and you are in work relationships with women of color, you want to be an ally, an advocate, you want to help best support those individuals, this is a book for you too. I think it gives you a way to get proximate through those stories, people's lived experiences that are different from yours. And through that deepening understanding, we all can certainly show up as better allies and advocates. And so I want to encourage all of you to make sure that you're seeing it as a book, not just for women of color, but book for all of us, right? A book for all
Yes.
of us. Um, And I love that, part of the premise is, owning your narrative. I think that's so important. And it speaks to so much of what you've shared today, Hadi, about how you like to show up for people. And again, in recognizing that there's so many limiting beliefs that we will harbor that we need to try to overcome. One thing, I'm not seeing any hands raised right now for questions, so I'm going to go to the next thought that I have, which is really to get you to expound upon when Latinas or women of color feel like they have to fit in rather than and conform rather than really fully show up in their identity to succeed. I think that is one of those big limiting beliefs as well. And I would love for you just to share some advice that you may have for how do we overcome that level of thinking that I have to fit in instead of being who truly I am and recognizing there's a lot of value and worth in my identity.
Yeah, I think this is such a great question. I would say that it's noticeable that as underestimated people race through the ranks, a lot of them end up sort of acclimating to their environment. And, sometimes the things that the unique things that kind of brought them to that place are lost because they're trying to fit in. It's kind of a little bit
Right.
of a survival tactic. I'm not throwing any shade at them. I understand it's hard. But I would say, that's not the route that I would encourage people to take. I think in the long run, that's not a choice that is going to serve us. And so I would say be unapologetically who you are, show up, fully and authentically, trust yourself and your instincts,
Mm,
lean into your superpowers. I talked about before, one of our superpowers is that we see the world differently because we have a different lived experience. So lean into that and
mm,
like say the thing that's like no one else is thinking, say it out loud. Like, be brave. I would encourage you to be brave, be bold. Don't be afraid to shine your light and play big. I know personally that I shrunk myself many times for various
mm,
reasons. Sometimes I just wanted to be likable. Sometimes I was just afraid to say something that I was thinking that was different from what the rest of the group thought. I was afraid.
mm,
I was afraid to maybe get penalized for thinking differently or for proposing, saying like, well, I'm not sure that that's the best solution. I think this solution could work better. I was afraid and I didn't want to play big. And I think, us showing up fully and authentically requires quite a bit of courage. And
yes.
it's not easy. So we really should be very self-aware. We should be very clear on our values. We should understand very clear our purpose. Like, why are we here? Why did God
Yeah.
put me on this earth? Why am I walking
Yeah.
this earth? And what am I here to do? And I know for me, it's really important to create new paths, not only for myself, but for other people. That's
Mm,
always because of how the way I grew up. I never had, just about never had anybody looking out for me.
mm,
So how I choose to respond to that is to make sure that I'm always looking out for other people. So that lived
yeah.
experience is what led me to that place, and that's something that I always choose to do, and it's important. It's a priority for me. It's not me, it's us. It's always us, knowing that like if I walk through a door, I'm bringing people with me. That's how I always think of it.
Well, you are speaking loudly and clear through the legacy that you're building and that you're creating. You've dedicated your career, Hadi, to uplifting underestimated professionals, even, of course, through boldly speaking, your company and beyond, and so many other examples that have been highlighted in today's conversation. So I'm so grateful that you've had a chance to share with our community. As I think about the final moments we have, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the next generation of Latino professionals, and how can they use their cultural identity as a strength?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, my journey hasn't been perfect. So I'm gonna say, I would like your journey to be better than mine because, there was a lot that I didn't do right. There were mistakes that I made. Um, you know, but I want them to know they're not alone. I think that's really important because we've been there. We already walked this walk. So you could learn from our mistakes and you could learn from the things that we went through, which is kind of the premise of my book. We have been paving the way, and I hope that it's going to make the experience of the next generation just a little bit easier and make their load a little bit lighter. I do want them to be brave and bold. My company's called Boldly Speaking on purpose. That part about being bold is really important, and you're going to get a lot of messages from the world at large, people, And you got to know who you are. You can't listen to what other people are telling.
Yeah.
You can't listen to people telling you who you are. You know who you are. And I feel like just remember that. Like when someone's trying to tell you, "Ooh, you're this," it's like, no, actually, I'm not. I'm actually this other thing. Let me tell you who I am, and let me tell you why. Maybe it feels that way to you, but this is who I am, and this is why I am that way. And I also feel it's like I want, I won't tell you the name of the title of the book, but I will tell you that it centers around a quote in Spanish that for anyone who speaks Spanish, they're familiar with this quote, and it's calladita te ves más bonita, which means you look prettier when you're quiet.
Mm,
I categorically reject that whole notion of like I'm gonna sacrifice my voice and my opinion for your comfort. So what I want more than anything else is for Latinas and women of color to not remain silent, but to use their voice, not only to celebrate their identities, but also to just make their community stronger and also to just speak their truth. Like I said, like for a long time, I felt like people were like, you're this and you're that and you're this other thing. And now it's like, no, 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 no. This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. These are my skills. These are these are my strengths. These are my superpowers. And I get to tell you who I am. And I just want that so much for our community.
mm. Beautiful. That is a great way to end today. Thank you, Hadi, for being here with us. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to help uplift underrepresented, underestimated individuals and professionals in ways that are really meaningful. We value your voice and we look forward to the forthcoming book in September. We've shared your LinkedIn, your Substack information. And I just want to also extend appreciation to this community for joining us week after week to be a part of the Intentional Conversations podcast. If you found this to be useful, I hope that you will share it out with someone else in your network. And we look forward to seeing you again next week for another episode of Intentional Conversations. Have a great, safe, weekend. We'll see you all next week. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.